was announced fairly recently that your recorder player founder member Richard Harvey would no longer be touring with the band. I mean, did this come as a bit of a shock to you, Graeme? Yeah.
Well, it did, yes. Yes, it came as a huge shock, actually, particularly as we'd just signed up with a new agency, and, we were hoping to put together quite a few more gigs and so on. So, actually, the gigs were in the book. The ones we've got now were in the book when Richard made this decision, and he was just off on tour with Hans Zimmer, playing Hans's film music on a massive scale tour of the world, really, for about 2 months. And I think he just realised that he'd bitten off more than he can chew, and his allegiance lied to more in that area, and he was. Hans had asked him to do another film afterwards, and I think it was all a bit too much for him to entertain the prospect of giving it enough energy and commitment to Gryphon that would have been needed. So yeah, he suddenly surprised us all by handing in his resignation, and at that time we thought, well, okay, so that's it then. That was the initial feeling. We'll have to pull out of those gigs and face the embarrassment of that. And then a couple of days after that, we kind of drew back together and just went and discussed the whole thing again. And realizing that probably 70 or 80% of the music that we'd played had been my compositions anyway, or Brian's. We thought, well, actually, hang on, we could save ourselves the embarrassment and so on of having to pull out of the gigs and just attempt to carry on. And we found an old friend of ours from the early days who specialised in the medieval instruments, played in a band called City Waits back in the 70s.
I remember that name, yeah.
Yeah, a man called Keith Thompson.
Oh, yeah. And
we've enlisted Keith, and our bass player also decided to emigrate to Thailand a little while before that. So we've the first man on my list was Rory McFarlane, who also does the bass job in Home Service now. It's a big decision, and it's a bit scary, to be honest, at the moment, and especially as we haven't had our major spell of rehearsals yet. We've only just got together in dribs and drabs and started running through things. It's awful. It's the hardest music to play with Gryphon. I mean, there was in a sense, when Richard said he left, I sort of I thought to myself, oh, thank goodness, I'm not going to have to go through all the pain and blood, sweat and tears of learning to play all that again, because every time you don't play it for a year, you forget it, and it's so intricate and complicated. But anyway, we are going to have to do it again, so and we're going to enjoy it.
And that's the best thing you can do. Without giving too much away, I mean, the latest developments with new band members and what have you, is that going to shape the set list in any way?
Is it going to affect the set list?
Yeah, maybe you won't pick some of the more obvious Richard Harvey pieces.
Well, you're absolutely right. You're probably thinking of the same thing as I'm thinking of, and that's the track. I know it's a popular track, but Midnight Mushrumps itself, we've just decided, in reverence to Richard, really, it's so much his piece that we don't feel that we can really do justice to it without him. But having said that, that's the only one I can think of, particularly, that we won't be doing.
Mm. Well, that's very good. I mean, in some ways, it gives the band reason for a new lease of life. Not least the reception of the early gigs, reunion gigs. But if you can get things together on the back of something like this, I mean, that's really quite good, isn't it, going forward? And you've mentioned the possibility of an album, which tends to cement things, doesn't it, really?
Well, oddly enough, it's a strange thing. It's what's happened to me, particularly over the last couple of years. It's a mirror image, really, because last year, John Tams, the lead singer of Home Service, and the chap I was talking about earlier on with the Albion band, he did the same thing. He suddenly tendered his resignation, and it was a huge shock to us then. But we'd been trying to get together some new material for the past 3 years, but nothing had really materialized. But we nearly knocked it on the head when Tams left, but found John Kirkpatrick as a replacement for him, and it galvanized the whole thing into a new spirit, and just really we just crashed forward with so many ideas for a new album. It was very, very exciting, and I'm just hoping the same sort of thing could happen with Gryphon. Otherwise, what happens is, I was feeling by the end of the 5 years that we've been playing all the old stuff with Home Service, you just turn into your own tribute band, and it kind of loses the excitement.
That's right. This might focus our minds on one particular Gryphon album, but I always ask this question to artists because I always wonder whether they feel constrained by their past. There's an expectation amongst the audience that they want to hear certain things and certain styles. Perhaps Gryphon in the future could go any which way, couldn't it? Because you've got that folky basis moving through progressive and into rock. Is there any one album, one Gryphon album, Graeme, that is your favourite?
Yeah, I suppose it's probably Red Queen to Gryphon 3, which seems to just hang together to me as a unified whole. You mentioned the concept idea. It was slightly, it's a very loose concept. It's kind of the chess game concept, the chess idea coming out of Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass, where the whole Gryphon sort of idea came from in the first place, And also, it includes an awful lot of my composition on there, mine and Brian's particularly. So I'd say that one, yeah.
So would you say that of all the albums is perhaps the stepping stone for the future?
I think you probably put your finger on it there. Yeah, that's probably very likely to be the case. Yeah.
We'll watch this space.